up the slide deck, please? Okay, and so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And can we go to the next slide? And I guess our first item is to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
I make a motion to move to approve the minutes of the February meeting.
I second that motion.
And all in favor? Okay. And anyone decline who I may not have seen? No? Okay. So that has been approved. And we, next slide, please, Dawn.
Do we want to make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda as well?
Yes. Do I have can I make that motion or do I have to get a volunteer? I'm sorry.
Would someone second that motion? So we can just.
I second.
Okay. Those in favor of adopting tonight's agenda? Raise your hands. Those not in favor? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I will be less rusty next month. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have one public comment. I'm gonna pull that up to read it. And it is regarding policy 516. It says recently.
I'm sorry, Keisha. Before you start, Dawn, you want to go to the next screen so that she can read the information about the public comment? No,
sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. Due to the health situation that our community is currently experiencing, the April 21st Racial Equity Committee meeting will take place via teleconference. Should anyone wish to provide public comment, please send an email that includes your full name to fcpsracialequity@fcps.org prior to the start of the meeting. The Racial Equity Committee welcomes and encourages public comment. Public comments will be read for up to 30 minutes. However, all public comment, whether read or not, will be posted on board docs within 24 hours of the meeting. Please note that public comment is for statements and questions will be directed to the appropriate staff for response. Okay. So our public comment, recently the County Board of Education considered a policy that provides guidelines for teaching controversial topics across the curriculum and not just in social studies classes. So-called Policy 516 defines controversial issues as a point of matter about which there exist significant opposing viewpoints and/or multiple perspectives. According to this policy, teachers can talk about socially significant issues with their students if 1, they provide students with access to relevant, credible information. 2, they present the topic in a way that is free of bias. 3, students are encouraged to form their own opinions and these opinions are respected. This is a tall order to say the least. In evaluating the proposal, one board member made the point that students might want to talk about current events. Indeed, questions from students often trigger such discussions. As an example, imagine an FCPA student who faces an issue that has received considerable attention in the recent weeks, violence towards Asians. She's obviously upset. The teacher feels the need to address this issue, so he starts talking about the recent killings in Georgia and how the pandemic fuels crimes such as this. Soon, Kyra, another student, refers to COVID-19 as Kung flu. Some students start laughing. Tyler, another student, chimes in saying, Asian Americans are partly to blame. After all, they started COVID. A classmate chimes in, we're making too much of this. He elaborates, we're talking about just one gunman who had mental problems. A few students begin to share their feelings for the first time, saying their classmates have no idea what they're talking about. Feeling he's losing control of the discussion, the teacher tries to restore order and address what he perceives as bias. But certain students feel as though as if they aren't being heard. Does this policy tell the teacher how to handle this situation? Certainly, it's an issue that qualifies as being controversial and socially significant. As someone who has embraced talking about difficult topics throughout my teaching career, I know how difficult it is. The problem with this policy is that it doesn't go far enough. Teachers need more than guidelines. They need educational and real-life experience, which make it possible for them to, one, repeatedly use the role of others in their cultures, or at least try to, develop knowledge and understanding that allows them to talk about diverse and often contentious issues freely and confidently. 3, gauge the level of the playing fields in the classroom and the larger society. Take this into account during class discussions. And 4, gain experience and evaluate how well they manage controversial issues with an eye towards improvement. Unfortunately, many teachers at all levels of education are not able to do these 4 things or do them well. Each of these skills takes awareness, understanding, and lots of practice. I suggest that the Board of Education, with input from the Racial Equity Committee, take another hard look at Policy 516. While this policy is well-intentioned, we're setting too many FCPS teachers up for failure. For this policy to succeed, we must begin by providing teachers with the training and experiences they absolutely need. Otherwise, it's our students who will pay the price. And this, public comment came from Rich Butcher, who in his email with this comment said, I'm a relatively new resident in Frederick. Besides being a college professor, I'm an author on the subject of diversity and a graduate of Howard University with a specialization in race and ethnic studies. After reading 516, I wanted to share some concerns, and he also submitted this to the News Post, but wanted to bring it to our attention as well. And that is the only public comment for tonight. Can we move to the next slide? And now, Dawn, if you can pull up David Bass's comments. Unfortunately, there's a Board of Education meeting going on concurrently with this meeting right now, so David is unable to join us, but he had put together some comments, and I'm going to read them on his behalf. No, this is the right deck, I'm sorry. First, David was flagging some upcoming policies that are coming through the policy committee that may be of interest to our Racial Equity Committee. These include Policy 318, Sexual Harassment, Employee Rights and Reporting, and Policy 447, Sexual Harassment, Child Sexual Abuse, Student Rights and Reporting. And he noted that when there is a new draft of this policy, he is going to email it to us so that we can provide feedback to the policy committee prior to their next meeting. I believe that the other items on this slide are just related to other things that have been done related to this. And if they're wrong, if that's wrong, I'll have him correct that after I have a chance to talk to him. Can you go to the next slide, please? Next, he had comments related to the thorough discussion at the March 24th meeting. He talked about concerns about the presentation being anecdotal and the importance of evaluating the program to sort of make sure we have a clear understanding of the purpose of the program, having demographic data on students arrested by SROs, having data on home visits, and having a more detailed budget. Next slide, please. And again, this is going to be one of our main topics for today. So we're going to be looking at the presentation from the Board of Education meeting and having a discussion between our group. But he wanted to share his thoughts as well. And in his eyes, some of the next steps are having student family survey, obtaining demographic data and clear goals of the program, and thinking through ways to involve staff and families in the hiring of SROs. And then the last feedback he wanted to give was related to a discussion around strategic goal 2, which includes staff hiring and racial demographics of current staff. And I think the take message here is that there are definitely some big disparities, and one of his primary questions that came out of that was like, what needs to be done? What does human resources need from the board in order to meet this goal within 4 years? And then there's 2 slides. We want to start with the next one that show the disparities both between FSPS staff and the student population, and looking at Frederick County in general. And we can see kind of across the board the lower numbers of teachers from all racial ethnic minorities compared to the student population. And then this is among gender breakdown among recently hired certified staff, and we see similar disparities. Okay, and usually I think he'd probably ask if anyone had questions or anything like that, but he's not here. So if there are any questions, feel free to send an email and we can follow up after the meeting. Okay. Okay, and just a reminder that I think we discussed last meeting the importance of sort of subcommittees having access to the public comments that are related to the work they're doing. And so we just want to let the committee members know that public comments are always available on the Board Docs website, and these are exactly how you would go about finding them. And then I think we're also going to work to either Dawn and sorry if Jones found this wrong. I think if we flag a public comment as being relevant to one committee, we'll sort of like remind you guys of that and make sure you have access to it. So for example, we're definitely going to share the policy 516, I think with like the curriculum committee, but also probably the training, because it talked a lot about that. So we'll definitely do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I believe most people know, we, thank you. We are have allowed for new members to replace a couple of members who have either resigned or been inactive, and because of that, they decided to resign as well. And we were accepting applications through Monday, and the goal is to approve new members at the May 12th Board of Education meeting. So we need to select a racial equity committee, membership committee to go through the applications. We're still finalizing them out, but we got a nice number of applications from community members and school staff as well. And I sent an email out a couple weeks ago. The people who I heard back from that meeting who I know were interested in the committee were Andrea, and then Keith Harris also volunteered to be a non-voting staff member in that committee. We are hoping, and me, Dawn, and Elisa are also interested in being in that committee, but we were hoping to get, I think, at least like 3 additional members. So I want to see if we have any other volunteers who would be interested in serving on the membership committee.
This is Tia. I'm willing to serve.
Thank you.
And I can't see if anyone is raising their hand. So if you could just unmute yourself and say your name, that would be fantastic. Next slide, Madam Chair.
Well, would I move here to vote on a subcommittee that consists of the volunteers so far?
What I have written is Andrea Dardello, Keith Harris, Elisa Andrade, myself, and Tia Dowdell, and you.
And I don't believe that you need a motion to accept the subcommittee. You're just assigning people to that subcommittee as they
Thank you,
choose.
Sabrina.
Sure.
Okay, so that will be our membership committee, and thank you, and Andrea and everyone else. I will send out an email, probably sometime this week, because we don't have a lot of time, just to talk about next steps and getting everything together. And thank you guys for volunteering.
Okay.
Next slide, please. And next, we're going to be sort of having our review and discussion of the SRO presentation. I'm going to turn things over to Elisa to facilitate that.
Thanks, Keisha. So this is just a reminder as we enter into the SRO program discussion. This is something that we did a few months ago, but just to remind everyone of the protocols for courageous conversations, either in the workplace, professionally, or personally. And this is taken from Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations About Race. Some of these protocols are stay engaged, speak your truth. You can't speak anyone else's truth but your own and your own experiences. It's okay to experience discomfort. Discomfort is always a sign that we're moving forward and we're changing and we're improving and we're growing. Lots of us don't experience growth without discomfort first. And the fourth and final protocol is expect and accept non-closure. Oftentimes when we talk about race, there are going to be things that are left open-ended, and that's okay, because we're not going to find all the answers just tonight, but we're asking everyone to experience that discomfort and stay engaged with us and speak your truth. Within that same vein, we're going to talk about, we're just a gentle reminder again for everyone, oftentimes when we have discussions about race, everyone comes from a different part of the compass, and our compass contains 4 parts. When we hear of something that causes controversy, a lot of us will respond quickly from a moral point of view, having a strong sense of, no, this is right, this is wrong. Some of us our first response will be an emotional response. Some of us will immediately ask for, where's the numbers? Where is the data? And then some of us will immediately want to take action, which is that hand symbol at the lower bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So what we ask when we have these courageous conversations about race, that if you feel yourself or sense yourself moving too strongly to one side of the compass, try to bring yourself back to the center. And also realize that different people also come from different parts of that compass too. So now we're going to move on. Our first little bit of this discussion, we divided it up into 2 parts. So knowing that we're all busy humans and we're all working and parenting and doing all the things that grown folks do, we realize that oftentimes we don't have time to listen to the Board of Education meetings in their totality, because oftentimes they go on for quite an extensive amount of time. So we want to make sure that as a racial equity committee, we do stay engaged. So one of the ways for us to be able to do that this evening is for us to listen a little bit to some clips. We only have certain clips of the Board of Education meeting, which was not tonight's, but the last one, the one that occurred previous to tonight's, where they had an SRO discussion, and the 3 agencies that are in charge of the SRO program and FCPS were able to present to our FCPS Board of Education. So we're going to listen to this, like I said, in two parts. The first part is a clip of the discussions of the different programs and the presentations that occurred during that Board of Education meeting. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pause and do some quick reflection. Then after that, what we're going to do is listen to the discussion of the Board of Education members after the presentation occurred and the discussion that occurred publicly. And then after that, we're going to reflect as a group. Does anyone have any questions before we start playing the clip?
Hi, yes, this is Andrea Dardello. Can you remind me of what an SRO is?
Yes, a school resource officer. So that is typically a police officer that is, and different school systems do it differently, but that police officer is one that would respond when the school calls for them. And what this discussion shows is the way the SRO program is set up here in Frederick County. So SRO means School Resource Officer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Elisa, just a question. So as we engage in the discussion, is there a purpose or an intent that you want us to think about the discussion, or is there an outcome at the end that we're going to sort of draw a conclusion to? So just to sort of frame my mind around the discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harris, because you gave me a great segue into the next slide. So, our next slide, Don, do you mind switching to the next slide? So the discussion we're going to watch is from the March 24th Board of Education meeting. And if you take a look on that slide, what we're going to see first is the presentation from the 3 different agencies that provide the SRO program services to FCPS. So the Sheriff's Office, the Frederick Police Department, and the Brunswick Police Department. In-kind services are not funded from the FCPS budget, which is something to keep in mind. The Frederick County Sheriff's Office assigns a deputy to all high schools except for Brunswick, which is actually staffed by the Brunswick Police Department. The Frederick Police Department supplements SRO coverage at schools in the city limits and assigns officers to middle and elementary schools to support adequate coverage of FCPS buildings. So, Don, if you can move to the next slide. So to frame our learning, like Dr. Harris said, what we're going to think about when we watch this very first part of the clip is, what questions do you have regarding the SRO program? And what do you want to know more about through that equity lens? And when we talk about the equity lens, what we mean is, what do we want to know more about from the perspective of those who have been historically marginalized, such as our Black and Brown students in FCPS? So Don, whenever you're ready, if you could go ahead and click on the video.
Yeah, and just sorry, one more thing before we say, I think also, Keith, in response to your thing, I think ideally, like after discussion, we'd like to sort of put forth a public comment from the committee that likely will include like questions that are outstanding and stuff like that. So we're sort of staying engaged in this discussion as the Board of Education continues to think through sort of the program and the next steps for this.
Additionally, I'm going to put in the chat box a link to a Padlet where you all can feel free to write any questions you might have about the SRO program, and where you can feel free to go ahead, click, and write about anything you're wondering about through an equity lens. And the way you're going to do that really quickly is, when I throw the Padlet in the chat box, you're going to see different categories up at the top. And those categories will be the 2 questions that I just asked, and you'll just click the plus symbol to add your comment. So all you're going to have to do is click the plus symbol to add your comment or your question as you're reflecting.
Are you able to hear anything? I'm not hearing anything either. Hold on a second.
The sound might be muted on the actual board presentation.
I'm going to try it one more time. Hold on.
Dawn, let us know if you need help or if you want us to try and play.
I think you might want to. I'm not sure if it is an internet issue on my end or a glitch, but it's just buffering. I'll stop presenting.
Okay, no problem. I'll go ahead and try to play. Hold on. Hold on one second. I'm trying to get it up right now. Keisha, let's go ahead and do this. Let's move to the first subcommittee report while I go ahead and get up that video, okay?
Okay, that works.
Okay.
John, do you mind sharing your screen with the presentation again? Okay, so I will start with the executive subcommittee updates. So we already talked about the new membership application updates. We just pulled together a membership committee, and the goal for the committee is to pull together our recommendations to be approved at the May 12th Board of Education meeting. We had extended applications through April. It was originally April 9th and extended to April 19th, which resulted in a nice number of additional applications. And in terms of member absences, we just want to remind people that in our bylaws, we said that members are committing to attend most meetings, and you're not supposed to miss 50% of meetings in a one-year period. And so we did go through our member list and and our attendance list and sort of reach out to folks who had missed more than half of the meetings, and those who weren't interested have officially resigned from the committee. But we thank everyone who's here, and we know it's a commitment, but we're looking forward to adding some additional members to help us do the important work that we're doing in this committee. And lastly, I just want to note that we did, as a committee, provide a public comment regarding policy 516 at, I think it was like 2 meetings ago, and that the comment that everyone should have seen, I sent it via email, was read in whole at that board meeting. And originally that policy was supposed to be approved at that meeting, but given that we had significant concerns with some of the with that policy and some updates that needed to be made, they did with it. So that did make us happy, and really feels like we were able to have a voice in that matter. So those are the updates from the executive subcommittee. Are there any questions? Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. Next slide. Okay. And so I'm going to turn it over to whoever is representing the hiring, recruitment, retention, and professional development of staff subcommittee today to give their update.
Thanks, Keisha. This is Sarah. I can give a quick update on some progress that we've made since our last meeting. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So as was mentioned in the previous meeting when we gave our, when we shared our recommendations, it was noted that we should look back to the policy that governed personnel. We had made recommendations on the regulation 300-1 on recruitment policy or selection and employment of teacher personnel. So we went back and looked at the policy that was associated with that. And we had also submitted more questions to central office to better understand current hiring trends that we've seen. I saw that there was information on the gender differences among race, which was helpful for us to see, along with information on the race equity trainings that have been rolled out in the last couple of years, as well as information on retention, promotion, and hiring of BIPOC staff. So we can go to the next slide. So regarding policy 301, which is the personnel policy, this policy outlines the priorities of hiring for the Board of Education. And they say that the board supports the recruitment and retention of high caliber employees by maintaining its position as a preferred employer in Frederick County. It does not anywhere in this policy state anything about race equity. So one of our recommendations is to add language that affirms the commitment to diversity among the hiring policies. So we had submitted that information to the executive committee earlier this month, although it might have been last month. The time is really kind of blending for me these days. So we wanted to make sure we had that governing piece to go along with the regulation recommendations we had made in the prior meeting. I can pause there to see if there's any questions about that personnel policy or any other further thoughts about how to strengthen that.
Hi, this is Andrea. Is this the revised statement that looks to include racial equity?
So this is not the revised. This is the actual policy as written. And our recommendation is to include some language along those lines.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No, thanks.
So this is Sabrina. Let me just clarify. If this information was provided for our board liaison, David, he then needs to obtain, I want to just review the process with people so they understand that. He needs to obtain agreement from 2 other board members to bring it to the policy committee, for the policy committee to then review this policy and look at it based upon the the information that we've submitted, the Racial Equity Committee has submitted, to consider additional language that affirms the diversity of employees. And again, we don't need to provide that specific language, but you've laid out exactly what you're hoping for the policy committee to consider. So I just wanted to review that policy with everyone for some clarity. So thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. So we've left this out of our hands at this point. It's on to others to take on to the next steps, but that was one thing we looked over. And then the next slide simply says we had submitted some questions, which we actually just received feedback from today. So we'll be reviewing that in the next few weeks. Thanks.
This is Tia. I have a question. Did you have an opportunity to look at any policies that you thought would be a good reflection of how this policy might look in its final form? I know that sometimes it can be helpful for the policy committee to get an understanding of the direction you're looking to go in. So I was just wondering if you'd seen anything that you liked.
Hi, Tia. Unfortunately, I have not had the time to go and look at other. I definitely believe there's probably some good role models out there, but unfortunately, we hadn't had the time to do that.
Okay. Okay.
And Dr. Harris, did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment. And as the slide is sharing there was some information, a lot of information shared with Mr. Bass regarding the hiring and recruitment of teachers of color. And actually at the beginning in Mr. Bass's comments, he actually put one of those slides up there. And should there be further discussion on those data, I would welcome it because how he presented the information sort of presents a skewed view of the data that was provided for him. And then I know he also had privy to information from the broader landscape relative to the number of graduates in Maryland and how that fares in each of the LEA's local school systems, including Frederick County. So I know he'll forward that information if he has not already to that subcommittee as they continue their work. And I'll engage in further discussion about the data just so that we can have a clear understanding of what the data shows and presents. So, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Looking forward to seeing it all and having further discussions.
Okay, any other questions for this subcommittee or comments? Okay, if not, I'm going to turn things back to Elisa. I think we got the technology working again.
We did. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than a room full of people staring at you trying to get technology up. So Dawn, I feel for you, girl. Okay, so finally the technology is up. So again, I'd like to ask and invite everyone to go ahead and click on the Padlet link that was placed in the chat box. If everyone could just give me a quick thumbs up if you were able to go ahead and get in the Padlet. Perfect. Okay, then I know I did the settings correctly. And then what you want to be able to do is to go ahead and click the plus button when you have a reflection of yours you'd like to write, something that you want to know more about through the lens of equity, or any questions you have about the SRO program. So this first clip is about 17 minutes long. So I'm going to go ahead and click play, and then feel free, like I said again, to go ahead and write in the Padlet, because that's kind of going to be our notes together as a committee as a whole. So let me go ahead and click play here and share my screen.
afternoon. Good afternoon. So I'm Scott Blundell, Supervisor, Security and Emergency Management for FCPS. We're here because the board members have requested a presentation from our SRO partners, law enforcement partners, who provide SROs for the schools. We have representatives from the Frederick County Sheriff's Office and the Frederick Police Department. Unfortunately, Brunswick PD was not available today to attend. We also have the heads of both those agencies here who are here to represent and support the schools, and they think of how important this program is to FCPS and to their agencies. So I'm going to allow Lieutenant
Lisa,
Regan,
can you turn
Sergeant
the volume up a little bit?
Corbett, and Sergeant
I wasn't sure if it was just me, but Andrea also was commenting about the volume.
So okay.
Lieutenant Jason Dieter, been at the Sheriff's Office for 18 years. I'm the current commander of the School Resource Officer Unit.
Unfortunately, that's as loud as it's going to get on my computer.
SRO unit, and I've been here for 16 years. I have a couple questions up on the screen here for you, just to mull over in your heads.
Can most people hear okay? Or could they? Yeah.
Could you all hear or no?
I put my headphones in and turned my volume all the way up, and then I was able to hear.
Yes.
Okay, so then thumbs up, is everyone still good or? Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll continue playing then, okay? Hold on one second. Oh my goodness. Hold on one second. Like the little engine that could over here, guys. Hold on. All right, growth mindset. We can do it now. All right. Let's see. Keisha, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. All right. Board of Ed meeting. All right, it's going to work this time, guys.
Yeah, there's no volume now.
Not at all?
I think you're on fast forward. So if you just pause and then maybe try hit and play.
Can you hear it now?
I think it's paused. You want to play it?
All right, hold on.
Katie, you had your hand up. Were you able to figure something out?
Oh, I was just wondering, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Are there transcripts of the board meetings to read through just in case we can't hear it?
That I'm not sure of.
There are minutes of the board meeting, and the board meeting is available. It's through a YouTube channel, so I wonder if it automatically will list translations underneath. I'll check on my end right now also, but give me just a moment.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Keisha, would you like me to try sharing one more time? I think what happened too is during the meeting, they also like elevated the volume at some points because they realized they couldn't hear people as well. So I think that's also part of the problem. Do we want to try one more time or no?
Let's try one more time and we'll figure out what it can be if it doesn't work.
Okay. I wonder also too, as another option, maybe, and I don't know if we're allowed to do this, give everyone like a 15-minute break to watch it. I can place the link in the chat and then we come back. So,
That's a
all
great
right.
idea.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Let's try one more time. If it doesn't work, let's do that.
Okay, hold on. Can you hear it or no?
No, there's no
No.
volume.
You
Okay.
should be able to turn on closed captions on the bottom.
Oh, I see. So what would everyone prefer to do? Would we prefer to go ahead and give everyone 15 minutes to go ahead and watch on your own and then come back, we turn our screens off and everyone watch on their own?
I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, I'm gonna throw the link in the chat. So then what we're gonna do is, let me just double check the timing of that section. You will watch from 1 hour and 30 minutes to 1 hour and 24 minutes. So that's what our discussion will be on. So I'm gonna put it right here, 1 hour and 30 minutes to 1 hour and, did I say 27 minutes? Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and place.
Going
Sorry?
backward. Understand. I feel like those numbers are going backwards, or am I misunderstanding the numbers?
Oh, my bad. Hold on. 130, sorry, to 157, sorry.
Oh.
7, sorry. All right, so let me go ahead and place the link in the chat for everybody, and then if everyone can just turn their cameras off and mute themselves as you watch it, and then we'll come on back.
And remember to still use the Padlet, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
To put your comments and everything as you're reviewing it.
Yep.
And that's going to be closer. This segment's actually the 27-minute one, so we're going to be closer to half an hour.
So we'll come back at what time, Keisha? 7:30?
Yeah. So Lisa, the link, I just want to see if people are having trouble because the link I clicked just took me to the general board doc. So I'm not sure.
Yep.
If
You're
folks
gonna
have-
click, you're gonna go ahead. You're gonna click on meetings when you get there. Meetings is in the upper right hand corner. And then you're gonna go ahead and you are going to click on where it says 2021 on the left hand side, and it'll expand. And then at that point, you'll click on March 24th, Board of Education meeting. Then you'll click on OE meeting. Then you'll click go ahead, and I'm putting the directions in the chat box for everyone as well at the same time. Then you'll go ahead and click on the video. And then you'll go ahead and once the video's up, you'll scroll underneath and click to agenda item 1.24. And it'll say school resource officer on it.
Thanks, Elisa. That's working.
You're welcome.
Hey guys, I know you may have like another minute or two on the video, but can we join back now? I feel like if you started, shortly after we figured everything out, you got the majority of it. And can folks at least either turn on their camera or give us a thumbs up so we know that you're back with us? I'll just wait like 1 minute till my computer time tells me 7:31, and then we will get started. Okay. So we just want to sort of get people's reactions to that presentation. So what are just your overall thoughts of those presentations? Any questions that came up? Anything like that? Kind of gut reactions.
Hi, this is Katie. This isn't necessarily like FCPS specific. It's more broad in terms of the SRR program, kind of across the country. I still feel very confused about what the program is, and I know they talked about it being implemented as kind of unfortunately after there was the beginning of the school shootings. But I guess now I'm just left wondering what is its true purpose, and seeing other things in the news that have gone on with school resource officers. And I guess I just feel kind of confused because sometimes I worry that it may be causing more damage than it is good. And I saw someone commented on the Padlet about getting more school counselors and mental health support and those kinds of services. And so I just feel almost like in a limbo. But again, it's not FCPS specific. It's very much so United States specific, I guess, in a more broader term, if that makes sense.
And I want to echo what Katie was saying. I was the one who wrote about the counselors because of seeing in their triad model, law enforcement, counselor, teacher. Makes me wonder, why are we not investing more in counselors and those who can do those early intervention services, especially thinking about the average age of being 12.5, which to me screams that these are a lot of issues that are stemming from trauma and the lack of support services. And that's where the interventions are really probably needed.
This is Andrea. One of the things that I was struck by was the emphasis, or maybe I was listening to it because I was listening for it. So maybe this is why I heard restorative practices, restorative justice. And so I thought that was good. And that's great that they're having that type of training. But I don't know, I just heard discrepancies about, the goal of the SRO was to, when an offense was made to hold the student accountable. But the ultimate goal of restorative practices is to restore the student back to the community. So I didn't hear a lot about that, how are students restored who have committed offenses. And I don't know, someone else mentioned on the board that a lot of the SROs were white males as opposed to, Black or brown SROs. We did see them in other areas of the film, participating in community activities or what have you. But I can imagine that if I were a young child, perhaps, I don't know, and I saw the SRO that did not look like me, but that looked like, officers that I see on the street, and officers that I see that may not look like me or even like me, then I'm not sure that I would feel a close connection or feel safer.
Are the SROs, and maybe Dr. Harris, you might know more information, are they receiving like implicit bias training at all, or going through some of the equity framework that you all have put together?
I can't speak for their full training, but I can tell you that the Equity Office for Frederick County Public Schools has and is planning to continue to work with them on some work with equity.
Go, Andrea.
I was just looking at the numbers. And what I saw is what we noticed in our subcommittee group, that there is in terms of equity, that there is a disproportionate number of Black males and Black females that were, I'm not sure what, maybe someone else can help me, but in terms of those who were, I don't know, disciplined is a lack of a better word, that the number of Black male and female students were twice as many as those of white students. So that stood out to me as well. So just in terms of equity work, I think that even though the numbers are small overall, that's work that still needs to be done in that area.
Agreed. And, my question related to that was, that's just the number of students where there ended up being some sort of an official outcome. But, how many of, those kids who had some sort of intervention, right? What are the percentages there? What do those numbers look like? I imagine those are much higher.
Yeah, I'm building off to you. I think that was one of my main questions after listening to the program reports. I was hoping for more kind of data. I'm assigned a researcher, so I'm like looking for the data and like the numbers, and sort of like, to Katie's point, like having clear, like, these are the goals of the program and this is how we're measuring success. And to be blunt, and it just felt more like a PR campaign versus like really hash out what we know and how we can improve. So I'm not saying like, let's dismantle or whatever, but it's like, how can we sort of like learn from this? Even if something is working well, which, we can put a question mark there, there's always room for improvement, but you need to be tracking, you need to be monitoring to be able to do that. And so I really wanted those like numbers. And, in addition to sort of all the happy stories, I know anecdotally I've heard enough like negative interactions that there is a counterbalance. So how can we learn from both of those to like improve the program? And that's definitely something I felt was missing from the presentation. So we are kind of short on time, so we want to kind of check on a couple things. First, to understand if like folks have a super hard stop at 8 o'clock, or if they can stay like an extra like 10 or 15 minutes. General, like 8:15, is that doable for people, or people like, I have to go? Okay. Yeah, so I don't know. No, we wanted to have everyone like listen to a snippet of the Q&A session, but I don't know. What did you get that down to, Elisa?
I got it down to about 13 minutes. What we can maybe do is call it for 10 minutes. We could do the first 10 minutes and kind of see where that takes us, and then kind of see where we leave off in our discussion from that point. What do you think? Yeah, so let's do 10 minutes. If you can tell where to go in the video, come back at 7:50. That'll give us like 5 minutes for a discussion and like 5 minutes to close the meeting, since I think folks have to head out.
Does that work?
Yep.
All right.
So let me tell everyone where to pick up. I provisioned for everyone this time so we can maximize our time here. So let me just throw the directions in the chat and then we'll be set to go. So hold on one. All right, so you're going to start at 3 hours and 17 minutes now. 3 hours and 17 minutes. And we'll go for about 10 minutes until 27. See you guys.
Okay, I know folks probably didn't finish fully, but can you turn on your cameras just to confirm you're here still? Okay, and due to time, I'm just gonna start talking. But I mean, there was probably like an hour plus of questions, and we clearly didn't get the whole, the whole preview of it. So I do want to say, if folks are interested, the video's there so you can listen to everything. David also did share his full list of questions that he, sent to Dr. Albin, and we will forward that to folks after the meeting for you to see, and we should be getting access to that once, they are answered as well. But just you got a sense of the sorts of questions that were asked by David and included in that. But I just want to spend the next couple minutes literally seeing, any kind of thoughts based on the snippet of the conversation that we just listened to.
I so appreciated Liz Barrett challenging the narrative that was being presented at the Board of Ed, where they were just, this litany of happy stories. I would have liked to have heard more about what they are learning, what are some challenges, where is there possibility for growth for them. And I think that would have been much more insightful and honest.
See a lot of heads nodding. Any other thoughts or comments?
There was a portion that I watched where the officer was saying there was really no way to gauge success of the program. If there's a cop car that rolls into the parking lot to prevent a theft of the car, something along those lines, that's basically the way you, I guess, can see whether or not it's successful, or that was the example he used. And so I would beg to differ. I think most people would stop doing something if they saw a police officer that doesn't have any connection to the program being at school. And so I would like to hear more about the real data, the real stories, the other side that we really did not hear, including how do they track or measure success?
So I accidentally went earlier and I couldn't help myself. I just was interested. And I heard the sheriff talking about issues with SROs at certain schools and them being rotated out. And that, I found that interesting. I think particularly in light of, what we've been hearing so much about in the media with police officers having issues, and rather than, being held to the same standard as anyone else, there's just sort of a rotation. We'll move you to another department, we'll move you here, or do this other thing. So I had some concerns about that, and I'm curious to understand what those issues have been. And why they felt the need to rotate them out. And then the other thing that I listened to was the change in the budget from 2017 to 2022. In 2017, the budget for the SRO program was $1.6 million on an annual basis. In 2022, that budget will be $2.5 million on an annual basis. And I would like to understand why such an increase in the program, why they felt the need to add additional staff, if I think particularly if it's working, why do we need more? And I'm interested to understand, related to that, they did show a chart earlier in their presentation in terms of numbers of, calls, et cetera. And it appeared that the number of calls were increasing versus decreasing. So again, I'm interested to see, how does that equal success if we're having potentially more issues with the police officers being there, and then how does that equate to an allocation of a larger budget?
Madam Chair, did you want me to share my screen for the last slide to wrap up?
Yes, please. And thank you, guys. This has been a great discussion, and I've been trying to keep track of all sort of the questions and areas that we have, because I do think there are a lot of questions. And so pulling together a public comment on behalf of the committee where we sort of outline some of the questions and areas we think there needs to be further discussion on is warranted. And of course, we'll include the committee in that, just so that it's not our perspective. So again, like I said, if there is interest in going back and you have other thoughts as you're reviewing that, please don't hesitate to reach out to the executive committee and send that our way, so that we can include those thoughts as we're pulling that together. So, okay, so action items. As I mentioned earlier, the public comments will be available on board docs, and so subcommittees should sort of take that into consideration as they're looking through the policies that are relevant to their committee. I think for 2 and 3, it's slightly updated. We were supposed to give an update in May. We wanted a little bit of extra time to pull everything together, given COVID and weather cancellations, and just some time it's taken us to get ourselves together, for lack of a better word. That wasn't a great word. So I think we have proposed presenting at the June 26th meeting, and I'm not sure it's been confirmed, but that's sort of our goal. And so because of that, and because we still need to hear back from our subcommittees, and I know a lot of subcommittees have been doing a lot of work, we are going to be having a meeting next month. I know sometimes we do every month, but we are going to be meeting next month on May 19th to discuss sort of the updates from the subcommittees. And so we're hoping between, in the next month, subcommittees can continue to make progress. And so from the subcommittees, again, I think we have 4 subcommittees included in the slides for this month. We only got through 1 subcommittee, unfortunately. But if there's any updates to those, they should be added in for our other subcommittees. We want updates from as many of our committees as possible, that we have an opportunity to discuss that and can sort of include any accomplishments during our report out at the BOE meeting in June. So can I just adjourn the meeting, or do I have to motion to adjourn the meeting?
I think we make the motion to adjourn, if I'm remembering correctly. Do you want to make the motion?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second, third, fourth, and fifth it.
Yeah.
We're good. Thank you guys all for your time. And then Keisha, I think we'll email everyone with the date of when we have to have the slides in by.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, thanks everybody. And we're ending right on time. So have a great evening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.